Hello, I'm Maria Bernier from the Connecticut State Library. We're here today introducing some videos to accompany our Experiencing America discussion sets. And we're hearing today from Rachel Tonucci and Elizabeth Lane from the Bloomfield Public Library about their social justice book group. So Rachel, what would you like to tell us?
Thank you, Maria. Believe it or not, it's just began its third year. So we're very excited about that. And really this started from in 2020 when racial justice was prevalent in the news and it became a national conversation with protesting and people sharing lists of all kinds of materials that people might want to read to start doing this work. And I kept coming across these great lists and these suggestions and recommendations, and I wanted to read all of them. And I thought, well, how can we do this? Let's create some sort of book club around this topic, and then we can get these things read and discuss them and really process and do some of this work. So that's really where the idea came from, and having Elizabeth's support to do that, of course, helps as well. So the first step is kind of, I think, taking a look inward and seeing maybe where you are first. And there could be a lot of excuses of why you don't know enough to be able to start something like this, but I would just encourage people to just start, because otherwise we'll just be waiting for, a time when we're ready, and maybe we're never ready. So I think just diving into it is the way to go about it. But there is, a lot of material out there that you can read if you're kind of wondering how to get started, and we'll share a lot of those materials with you. But it's really just that looking inward and the self-awareness. So in our previous video, we talked a little bit about our staff training and identity, and looking at who you are, kind of how you grew up, some of the people in your community and your family and your friends, and kind of looking at what your experiences were, and then being able to understand from there what your perception is of the world and how you see it. And so a great way to run the book club is to bring in all those other voices through memoir and through characters in fiction and things like that. So don't say that you don't know enough, because none of us do. And the idea is not to be an expert, because no one is an expert in this work. So, you want to make sure that when you're facilitating the group, you speak, from I statements and talk very, plainly about what your experience has been, but also give everyone else time to process, because a lot of people might be coming to this for the first time, not have really thought about these things before. So I find sometimes there'll be silence, and that's good. So, I'll wait and I can tell that people are processing, and you want to be a facilitator and a guide, but you also want to give people the time to maybe make that realization on their own. So and that's part of, for some, maybe more than others, we're not used to sometimes sitting in silence, and we feel like we have to talk, especially when you're running a program. You might want to fill that void, it seems, but it's all that part of like sitting in sometimes the discomfort, and that's okay, or being a little uncomfortable, I guess. Some of the phrases have been, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not really growing and learning. If we're comfortable all the time, then we're just staying in that space and not evolving. So that's one way to think about it. And as you practice and as you keep meeting with different people every month, ours is every month, you could start quarterly if you wanted to. It gets easier to have these conversations, and it kind of draws people out. You also want to remember that sometimes the word library to people has come with a generation or decades of mistrust. And so we want to create what we call a safe space, but also a brave space where people can just come and understand that whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, the space that we're creating is something where people feel respected and where they have a voice and where they can process and make mistakes, and that's okay. And I've thought sometimes about, you know, I'm a white woman, who am I to be running this and leading it and facilitating? And, you know, when we can, I'll, you know, always invite perhaps a colleague of color for a particular book that we might be talking about to have the lived experience. Also knowing that some of the material we're reading is that person's experience and shared, but then we also don't want to expect Black or Indigenous people of color to be educating us. And so that's important too. It's not their job to educate us, but we certainly want to invite people when we can have a variety of perspectives and experiences to share with the group. So in the book selection, I just wanted to share with you some of the materials that we looked at so far. We started really with that anti-racism topic. We started in 2021. And as I said, that was kind of what was going on at the time. In our other video, Elizabeth mentioned through our training with the NCCJ, they call it the 8 or 9 isms, which are sort of those marginalized group and identities where those come from. And also, you know, within racism, you'll also start talking about things like ethnicity and immigration status, also the nuances of colorism and what that brings up and how these all intersect as well. We read some articles about like, so what are all these anti-racism books even about? And is that the right topic for term for them? Those kinds of things. And then we really tried to have a variety of materials, everything from nonfiction and a little more academic with How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi, all the way to the graphic memoir Good Talk by Mira Jacob, which is about an immigrant family's experience and how she talks to her son and raises the next generation with some of these issues. So I've really tried to have a variety of nonfiction, of memoir, of some graphic novels or memoirs, and some fiction with characters that might represent one of these groups or marginalized groups or identities. And after we really focused the first year on anti-racism and race, we then moved to all these different isms and tried to bring in other identities as well, such as ableism with an autistic boy and The Reason I Jump, as the narrator, Shrill by Lindy West, which is a fantastic memoir about not only sexism, but sizeism and her size as well. With a lot of these, as with Shrill, it connects sometimes to streaming TV or movies that are happening too, that people can connect to. And we even had some podcast chats and some TED Talk programs as well. And that's another way to bring in, if you're sensing that perhaps people might not read a whole book right away, maybe you start with a podcast that they listen to and discuss, or maybe a TED Talk. Some of the books, such as This Chair Rocks by Ashton Applewhite, has a wonderful TED Talk with it that's about, I think, 12 or 19 minutes that really sums up what the whole book is about. And maybe that's what you want to start with when you start a group like this. So that is kind of one way to go about it. We also really want to make sure that we have norms, that we have group norms. So I will also share that as well, because you can't really create that safe space unless people all understand what to think about as they're talking. And these have come from a variety of places. The NCCJ we mentioned, our town's public schools did a PD that they shared with us on how to be an anti-racist, and I looked at some of their work. And then also a wonderful group in Philadelphia called Barway 215. That's for educators. And so some of these ideas of confidentiality, for example, is a big one. We say the lesson leaves, the story stays. So if you want to go share with a neighbor what you learned about, you don't want to use the names or the specific details, but you want to kind of summarize what you got out of it. The step up, step back, I always try to make sure everybody's able to talk, but also realizing that on Zoom, perhaps somebody's eating dinner or doing the laundry and they want to just listen in, and they can certainly do that. So I really will try to say, does anyone who hasn't spoken already want to add something? And if they don't, that's fine. And that we're all learners. I'm a learner. Everybody here is a learner, no matter what their experience has been. We're all learning. We learn from each other, and we shouldn't feel as if we need to be an expert on the topic, because that's not possible with this work. And that we have an ongoing reflection, the using I statements, the idea that even if we feel we represent a certain identity, we are not speaking for that group or speaking from our own lived experience. And that we expect and accept non-closure, that if we're sort of hanging out there in the work and it's uncertain, that's okay. But know that, we're growing all the time as this happens. And then sometimes if it could get heated, there's a wonderful Courageous Conversations Compass by Glenn Singleton, where you might realize that you're kind of really disagreeing with what somebody else in the group is saying, and you're not sure why. And if you kind of look at where you're coming from, it might be that you are emotionally responding to something that you've been through, whereas somebody else is speaking about it very academically or intellectually, and they haven't had the experience. And once you realize that you're just coming at it from these different places, then it might be not that you're disagreeing, but that you're just in very different places. So that if you're ever having a tough time with people who kind of seem to be clashing a little bit, you might use that tool as well. I haven't used that yet, but I like that I have it. And so establishing the norms, looking at some of the selections and having variety. We say with our philosophy on all programming, but this programming as well, that the numbers are not the important thing. It's quality over quantity, and that we need to keep doing it no matter who shows up. So the fact that there could be 4 people, those people might come away with a lot of learning and a wonderful, intimate group of who was perhaps even more comfortable sharing than they might have been with a bigger group. So we always ask for feedback as well with all our programs, but it's particularly important with this. So we always ask, what did you think of it? What might you have made it different? What would you do differently, or what would you like to see in the future, so that we can make sure if there's a particular group perhaps that hasn't been represented in one of the materials, then we can make sure to include that. And we've used a lot of those ideas, including sometimes some follow-up programs that aren't a book club, but maybe have a training on the topic that we covered. We make sure to keep staff involved. We have a Slack channel and, email obviously, and tell them what's going on if they ever want to join. And then we always make sure everyone's got a library card so they can take advantage of all these things that we're offering. And it also helps the stakeholders understand that if we ever have to go to bat for this program or anything else that we're doing, we show that we serve everyone. And that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Rachel. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth, from the library director's point of view, is there anything you'd like to add to this discussion about the logistics of running the book group?
Yes, I would like to empower directors to feel that there's people on staff that can lead this work. So for instance, as you just heard, the excellence that is Rachel Tonucci, she was a new staff member when she started this work. And, you know, I think if directors are too busy or don't feel comfortable doing this work, tapping people on staff, but then allowing them to lead and move forward, you know, not micromanaging the work. And, you know, we all have leaders on staff, but the question is, do we allow them to lead or not? So when I hear people say, oh, you know, we don't really have any leaders. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So look on staff and also within your community. And I also wanted to second that, you know, we don't care about numbers in Bloomfield. That being said, we have pretty big numbers. So when Rachel was saying it's quality over quantity, absolutely, because when people come to a program and it was well done, they're going to come back. So that program that might have only had 10 people at it, that's okay. Because we are educating those people, and then those people are taking what they learn in the library, going out into the community, teaching others what they learned from the library. And that's how we empower our entire community, not just ourselves, which is another part of our mission statement in Bloomfield, which is, now I have it somewhere. By breaking down barriers to access and opening doors to opportunity, building community and encouraging lifelong learning, BPL works to improve the quality of life for all of our residents and strives to be the heart of our town. So this work is so much bigger than us, and that's why you want to do it right. And that's why you want to make sure that you empower the staff that can do it to do it. And if you don't have that staff, which I don't believe, then you got to make time for professional development outside of your organization.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Rachel, for your time on this recording.
Thank you.